The night is quiet in the Japanese countryside. The first faint hints of dawn are brushing the sky with pale silver light, pushing back the heavy darkness of the late hours. In the stillness, the world feels balanced, as if everything is caught between night and day, waiting to tip into the rhythm of morning. Inside a wooden house, built carefully with sliding paper doors and smooth, worn floors, a man stirs from his sleep. He is a samurai, a warrior bound to honor, duty, and discipline, yet before he can carry out the responsibilities of his role, he must first greet the morning with the calm precision expected of him. His waking is not rushed, nor careless. Every act, even the simple act of rising from his bedding, is performed with an awareness that life itself is a practice of discipline. The room is bare, uncluttered, designed to leave the mind clear of distraction. A small oil lamp, now burned low, sits in the corner, casting its last glow. The bedding is folded with care, not left in disorder. The samurai's first act upon opening his eyes is not to stretch or linger, but to breathe slowly, deeply, as though drawing strength from silence itself. He feels the cool air of dawn drifting through the paper walls, hears the faint calls of night insects fading as birds begin to stir. It is in this quiet transition that his day begins, not with noise but with stillness. He rises, his movements deliberate. The floor beneath his bare feet is cool, polished from years of use. He does not stumble, nor act lazily, for the samurai is taught that the way a man greets the day is the way he will greet the challenges of life. He folds his bedding neatly, each crease smooth, each corner aligned, until it is placed properly in its place. Disorder in the home reflects disorder in the mind, and so the very first step in his day is to bring order to the world around him. The sliding door opens with a soft wooden sound. Outside, the air is fresher, tinged with a faint scent of pine and earth. The garden, though small, is kept with care, its stones arranged in patterns, its gravel raked into lines that resemble the ripples of water. He kneels before it, bowing his head slightly, acknowledging the harmony of nature before he begins the tasks of the day. In this moment, before the sun has fully risen, the samurai reminds himself of humility. No matter his skill with the sword, no matter his role as protector and servant to his lord, he is still one small part of a vast, unchanging world. The ritual of cleansing follows. He pours fresh water from a wooden bucket into a basin, dipping his hands and rinsing his face. The water is cold, bracing, pulling away the heaviness of sleep and sharpening his senses. He does not complain of the chill, for discomfort is another form of training. To endure without hesitation is the mark of a disciplined spirit. He wipes his face carefully, the droplets falling onto the stone, and lets the coolness settle into him. When he returns inside, the house is still silent, the rest of the household not yet stirring. A samurai rises before others, for it is his duty to lead by example. He kneels upon the tatami mat in a posture of meditation. His knees are firm against the floor, his back straight, his hands resting lightly upon his thighs. He closes his eyes and begins the practice of quieting the mind. Breathing in, breathing out, each breath steady, each thought allowed to drift away like clouds passing in the morning sky. This meditation is not mere relaxation, but discipline. In silence, the samurai confronts himself, stripping away distraction, sharpening his will. He reflects upon the code of Bushido, the way of the warrior, that governs his life: loyalty, honor, self-discipline, courage, and respect. These are not just ideals to be remembered, but living principles, to be renewed each morning. He considers his Lord, to whom he has sworn unwavering service. He considers his ancestors, whose spirits watch over him. He considers death, not with fear, but with calm acceptance, for a samurai is always prepared to give his life in the service of duty. The minutes pass in stillness. The world outside grows brighter as the first rays of sun filter through the paper walls, painting the room in soft amber light. Only when the samurai has found complete stillness within himself does he open his eyes. His body feels grounded, his mind sharpened, his spirit aligned with the day ahead. Rising once more, he prepares for the first physical task of his morning, tending to his weapons. The sword is not simply a tool of war for the samurai. It is his soul, a reflection of his honor and spirit. He approaches the rack where his katana and wakizashi rest, their blades sheathed, their presence dignified. He bows before them briefly, a gesture of respect, before carefully removing the katana from its stand. The sword is long and elegant, its curve designed for precision and power. He places it across his lap as he kneels, then slowly unsheathes it, the steel catching the faint glow of the morning light. The blade is spotless, yet he inspects it closely, for neglect is shameful. With a soft cloth, he polishes the steel, ensuring no dust nor moisture dulls its brilliance. The oil used to preserve the blade is applied carefully, spread with steady hands, the scent faint but distinct. Every movement is methodical, a ritual repeated countless times, yet never rushed. To care for the sword is to care for one's own life, for in battle, a single flaw in the weapon may mean death. Once the katana is tended to, he repeats the process for the shorter wakizashi, the companion blade. Together, these two swords represent his identity as a samurai, the deish, the great and small, inseparable from the man himself. When the cleaning is finished, the swords are returned to their places of honor, resting silently, ready for the duties of the day. By now, the household is stirring. The faint sound of footsteps can be heard, the smell of rice cooking beginning to drift faintly through the air. The samurai does not immediately join them, but continues with his own quiet exercises. He steps outside once more, this time to the yard, where space allows him to stretch and move freely. He begins with slow movements, loosening his limbs, his body steady and controlled. Then, with wooden practice sword in hand, he begins Carter, the rehearsed forms of combat, each swing and stance executed with absolute precision. The morning air is crisp, and the sound of the wooden blade cutting through it is sharp, rhythmic. His feet slide across the earth with balance, his arms move with controlled strength. He repeats the motions countless times, as he has done since childhood, never growing careless, never allowing routine to weaken his focus. For a samurai, mastery is not found in novelty, but in the perfection of the same forms, over and over, until body and spirit become one. By the time the sun has risen fully, his body is warmed, his mind is sharp, his spirit is centered. The day has truly begun, and already he has practiced the three pillars of his way: order, meditation, and discipline in training. Soon he will join his household for a simple meal, and then the duties of service will begin. But in this first part of the day, in these hours of quiet preparation, the samurai has already lived fully in accordance with his code. And so, the dawn of the samurai passes slowly, with calm strength, with harmony between man and nature, with unwavering commitment to the way of the warrior. Chapter 2: Training the Body. The sun has now lifted above the horizon, painting the countryside in warm light, casting long shadows across the ground. For the samurai, dawn was the quiet hour of reflection, of cleansing, and of sharpening the mind. But as the morning ripens, another duty calls: the training of the body. Discipline does not end with meditation, nor with tending to one's weapons. The body itself must be as finely honed as the blade. To neglect it would be to dishonor the code of the warrior. For the samurai, the body is not a vessel of comfort but a tool of service, meant to endure hardship, to bear armor, to strike with precision, to ride with balance, and to fight without hesitation. The day ahead will require strength, agility, and endurance, and so the morning hours are devoted to training, for without it, the warrior cannot serve. The samurai steps into the yard, where the earth is firm, worn smooth by years of practice. His wooden practice sword, the Bokken, rests at his side. Yet before even touching it, he begins with the body itself. His feet spread slightly apart, knees bent, posture tall, he begins to move slowly through stretches that awaken the muscles. The arms extend outward, rising with the breath, then lower again as he exhales. Each motion is deliberate, never rushed, as though even in the smallest movement, there is meaning. He twists the torso gently, loosening the spine, then bends forward, letting the body fold as the morning air cools his skin. Strength is not built in haste, and the samurai knows that the foundation of endurance is laid in simple, steady preparation. He lowers himself onto the ground and begins steady push-ups, his body perfectly straight, his arms firm. Each push is slow, controlled, his breath in harmony with the movement. He does not count quickly, nor race through them, for speed is meaningless without control. After many repetitions, he pauses, shifts, and continues with squats, his legs bending and rising in rhythm. These are not the exercises of vanity, nor to build bulk, but to craft endurance, legs that can carry armor across long marches, arms that can wield the katana for hours without faltering, a body that can withstand the hardships of war. After the body is warmed, he takes up the Bokken, the wooden sword, smooth from years of use. He steps into position, feet set firmly on the ground, knees slightly bent, shoulders loose yet ready. With one deep breath, he lifts the weapon, then cuts downward in a precise arc. The sound of the wooden blade slicing through the air is sharp, clean. He returns to the ready stance, then repeats. Again and again, the same motion, the same arc, each one identical to the last. To an observer, it may seem repetitive, monotonous even, but to the samurai, repetition is the path to mastery. Every strike deepens the connection between body and blade, until the sword is no longer a tool in the hand, but an extension of the self. The muscles remember the movement, the feet recall their placement, the hands know the angle without thought. In time, the body acts with precision even when the mind is occupied with the chaos of battle. The sun climbs higher, and the rhythm of training continues. The samurai does not grow careless nor distracted. His focus is absolute. After many strikes, he shifts to another kata, moving through a series of stances and cuts that flow one into the other. His feet glide over the earth, his body pivots, the Bokken rises, cuts, blocks, and thrusts. Each motion is balanced, each transition smooth, as though he is moving through a carefully composed dance. And yet, this dance is one of death and survival, a rehearsal of movements that one day may decide life's outcome. Sweat beads upon his forehead, trickling down his brow, yet he does not wipe it away. Discomfort is endured, for the body must be tested. He continues until his breath grows heavy, then pauses only briefly to steady it, standing still as the cicadas begin to hum in the warming air. But sword practice is only one aspect of training. The samurai also takes up the yumi, the longbow, taller than the man himself. Archery requires not only strength but patience, calmness of spirit, and unbroken focus. He carries the bow and a set of arrows to a marked distance, where a target of straw awaits. Standing tall, he places his feet in the proper stance, wide yet balanced. The arrow is nocked with careful precision, the bow drawn back slowly, the muscles of the back and shoulders tightening as the string grows taut. The moment of release is not rushed. The samurai breathes, stills the mind, and only when his spirit is steady does he let the arrow fly. The bowstring snaps forward with a sharp sound, and the arrow whistles through the air, striking the straw target with a firm thud. He does not celebrate, nor show pride, but quietly retrieves another arrow, repeating the process. Again and again, each shot a test of discipline, each one a reminder that the warrior must remain calm even under strain. In the pauses between arrows, he listens to the world around him, the rustle of leaves, the call of a bird, the faint breeze brushing the grass. Archery is not only a test of the body, but of the connection between man and nature. The arrow must fly true, and for it to do so, the spirit of the archer must be aligned with the world around him. When the bow training is finished, the samurai moves to another essential practice: horsemanship. His horse waits nearby, tethered lightly, its dark mane stirring in the breeze. The animal is more than transport. It is a companion in war, a partner upon whom the samurai's life may depend. Approaching with calm respect, he strokes the horse's neck before mounting in a fluid motion. The training field opens into wider ground, where the horse can move freely. At first, the riding is slow, steady, the samurai adjusting his posture, his weight balanced with the movement of the animal beneath him. Then, with a slight nudge, the pace quickens, the horse breaking into a trot, then a gallop. The wind rushes past, the rhythm of hooves pounding against the earth echoing like a drumbeat. Even in speed, the samurai remains calm, his body moving in harmony with the horse, his grip sure but not forceful. To master the horse is to master balance, patience, and trust. He practices guiding the animal through turns, halting suddenly, then surging forward again. In time, he draws the bow once more, loosing arrows while riding, striking the target with precision even at full speed. This skill, difficult and demanding, is one that separates the disciplined warrior from the untrained. To strike true from horseback is to prove mastery not only over the body but over the partnership between man and beast. Hours pass in this steady rhythm of training, the body tested through endurance exercises, the sword drilled through countless forms, the bow practiced with patience, the horse guided with harmony. Each task leaves the body stronger, the mind sharper, the spirit steadier. And yet, the samurai does not see training as a burden but as life itself. There is no separation between practice and existence. To live as a samurai is to train, and to train is to live. By midday, the sun hangs high, the heat pressing upon the earth. The samurai returns to his home, body weary yet steady, spirit quiet yet sharpened. His clothing is damp with sweat, his muscles ache, but his heart is calm, for he has fulfilled the duty of strengthening the vessel that carries him through the world. Soon he will rest briefly, share a simple meal, and prepare for the next aspect of his path, the training of the spirit. For the samurai, the body is a sword, and like any blade, it must be sharpened, tested, and cared for each day. Only through constant effort does it remain strong. Only through unbroken discipline does it remain true. And so, as the morning turns to afternoon, the training of the body is complete, another step in the endless path of the warrior. Chapter 3: Training the Spirit. The body has been tested. The morning has passed in sweat and focus, in the rhythm of sword, bow, and horse. Muscles ache, yet they ache with purpose, carrying the quiet satisfaction of discipline fulfilled. The samurai returns to his home, not to collapse into rest, but to enter the next phase of his path. For the way of the warrior is not only carved into flesh and bone, but also written upon the heart and the mind. If the body is the blade, then the spirit is the hand that guides it. Without a strong spirit, even the sharpest sword wavers. Inside the house, the air is cooler, shaded by the roof and the walls of paper and wood. The samurai kneels once more upon the tatami mat, his posture upright, his movements calm. Around him, the home is still simple, uncluttered, without distraction. On a small stand rests an incense burner. With deliberate care, he lights it, and soon the faint, curling smoke rises, carrying with it a fragrance of sandalwood. The scent fills the room, soft, steady, grounding him in the moment. He closes his eyes and begins to breathe deeply. Meditation is not escape, nor idleness. It is the sharpening of the inner blade. The mind, like steel, must be polished each day, or it will grow dull. He sits unmoving, the world outside drifting into silence, until all that remains is the steady rhythm of air entering and leaving his lungs. In this stillness, he reflects upon the teachings that guide his path. Bushid, the way of the warrior, is not only a code for battle but a philosophy for living. Its principles echo in his mind like ancient verses: righteousness, courage, benevolence, respect, honesty, honor, and loyalty. These are not empty words, nor ideals kept only for grand occasions. They are the small, everyday acts that shape a man's soul. To train the spirit is to measure oneself against these values, to ask with each dawn, have I lived with honor? Have I served with loyalty? Have I faced the world with courage? The samurai recalls stories of those who came before him, ancestors whose lives were given in service, men who faced death with calm acceptance, who placed duty above self. Their spirits linger in memory, guiding him still. In silence, he honors them, not with words but with the stillness of his breath, the calmness of his mind. For the dead live on not only in tales, but in the example they set for those who follow. Time stretches. The smoke curls upward. The samurai does not count the minutes, for meditation is not measured in length but in depth. When his mind begins to wander, he does not grasp at the thought but lets it drift away, returning to stillness. When fatigue presses upon him, he does not resist nor give in, but simply observes. This is the practice, to see clearly, to let the storm of the mind quiet, to remain unmoved. But training the spirit is more than meditation alone. Rising slowly, the samurai moves to another practice, one equally vital, the art of calligraphy. On a low wooden table rests paper, inkstone, and brush. He kneels before them, grinding the ink stick slowly against the stone, mixing it with water until the black fluid pools with perfect smoothness. The brush is lifted carefully, dipped lightly, then poised above the paper. Calligraphy is not a mere craft, but an extension of the spirit. Each stroke reveals the state of the mind. A wavering hand reflects a wavering heart. A rushed movement betrays impatience. But a steady line, bold yet balanced, reveals inner strength. The samurai lowers the brush, and the first stroke flows onto the page, dark and deliberate. Each line follows, flowing into characters of elegance and meaning. Perhaps a verse of poetry, perhaps a passage of wisdom, perhaps a single word of great weight, loyalty, honor, truth. As he writes, the outside world fades. The brush moves in rhythm with the breath, each stroke both an act of creation and an act of training. When the page is finished, he does not judge it as art for display, but as a mirror of his inner self. If the lines are imperfect, then the spirit must be steadied further. If the strokes are true, then the day's meditation has borne fruit. Another form of spiritual practice lies in poetry itself. The samurai, though trained in war, is also trained in the art of words. Haiku, tanka, and other verses flow not as entertainment but as expressions of balance, of awareness of nature, of clarity of thought. Sitting quietly, he composes simple lines, perhaps of the morning's dawn, or the flight of a bird, or the stillness after training. These poems are not for others but for himself, a reminder that the warrior must see beauty even in a world often marked by violence. Later, when the air has cooled again, he prepares for another ritual of the spirit, the tea ceremony. The tools are brought forth, the tea bowl, the whisk, the bamboo scoop. Water is heated with care, tea powder measured with precision. The ceremony is not hurried. Each act is deliberate, from the way the tea is whisked into froth to the way the bowl is turned before drinking. The tea ceremony is meditation in motion, a living practice of respect, harmony, purity, and tranquility. To serve tea is to honor the guest. To drink it is to honor the moment. Even alone, the samurai performs it with the same devotion, for discipline is not dependent on audience. Through meditation, through calligraphy, through poetry and tea, the samurai sharpens the spirit. These practices may seem gentle compared to the clash of steel, yet they are no less essential. A warrior without spirit is like a sword without edge, strong in appearance but useless in truth. The battles of the world are fought not only with arms but within the self, and it is in these quiet hours of reflection and art that the samurai prepares for them. By the time the afternoon light softens, his spirit feels renewed, balanced against the weight of the body's training. He has tended not only to his flesh but to his soul, aligning both with the code that governs him. Soon, the duties of service will call, the demands of lord and land will press upon him, but for now, he has strengthened the unseen core that guides every action. And so, the training of the spirit ends not with fanfare but with calm. The incense has burned low, the paper filled with strokes of ink, the tea bowl set aside, the verses quietly composed. The samurai bows once more, acknowledging the moment, before rising to continue his day. Chapter 4. The Armor and the Sword. The afternoon sun begins to lean westward, its golden light streaming through the countryside, stretching shadows across fields and villages. The samurai, having trained his body and centered his spirit, turns now to the tools that define his role more than any other, the armor that shields him, and the sword that embodies his very soul. To outsiders, armor and weapons may seem like simple instruments of war. Yet to the samurai, they are more than wood, steel, or silk. They are extensions of his honor, tangible expressions of duty, symbols of a life lived in service. To wear armor is not only to prepare for battle, but to cloak oneself in centuries of tradition. To wield the sword is not simply to fight, but to carry the essence of the warrior's spirit in one's hands. The samurai enters the room where his equipment is kept. It is not cluttered with trophies nor adorned with excessive decoration. Each piece rests in its place with respect. He kneels before the rack where his daish, the paired swords of katana and wakizashi, are displayed. The blades gleam even in the fading light, their presence commanding without words. Beside them rests the armor, carefully maintained, each part set in order as though waiting silently for its wearer. He begins with the armor. Piece by piece, it is inspected, polished, and adjusted. First, the D, the cuirass that protects the torso. Made of iron plates lacquered and laced with silk cords, it is strong yet flexible, designed to deflect arrows and blades without hindering movement. He runs his hand across its surface, feeling the cool hardness beneath his palm. Any flaw, any weakness, could one day cost him his life. He checks the laces, the fastenings, ensuring each one is firm. Next are the sode, the large rectangular shoulder guards. They are lifted and examined, their plates layered like the scales of a dragon, their cords woven in intricate patterns. To many, they are striking to look at, but to the samurai, beauty is secondary to function. They must protect without burdening, allowing the arms to move freely, allowing the sword to be drawn without obstruction. He tests their weight, their balance, his movements slow but precise. The code follow, the armored sleeves that shield the arms, hands, and forearms. He slides them on, flexing his fingers, feeling the blend of protection and mobility. A samurai's grip must never be hindered, for the hand holds the sword, and the sword is life. He bends the wrist, testing the cords, then removes them, satisfied they remain true. Piece by piece, the armor is studded, the high date, which guards the thighs with plates of iron, the suniate, protecting the shins, the kabuto, the helmet, with its curved crest and fierce design. The kabuto he lifts with reverence, for the helmet is not only shield but symbol, its shape and decoration a mark of identity, declaring both clan and spirit. Inside, a small charm or written prayer is sometimes placed, a silent protector carried into the chaos of war. He bows his head briefly before setting it down again. The armor is not worn today, for there is no battle to fight, no campaign to join. But it is maintained as though war could arrive at any hour. For the samurai, readiness is a constant duty. Armor left to decay, cords left untended, plates left unpolished, these are signs of negligence, dishonor. By keeping each piece prepared, the samurai keeps himself prepared, for one cannot know when duty will call. With the armor inspected, his attention turns now to the heart of his identity, the sword. He kneels once more before the katana, bowing lightly before lifting it from its stand. Its weight is familiar, balanced perfectly in his hands. Slowly, he draws the blade from its scabbard, the steel singing softly as it is revealed. In the afternoon light, the edge gleams with a sharpness that seems almost alive. The hamon, the temper line running along the blade, shimmers faintly, evidence of the craftsman's skill, proof that this weapon was not made hastily but forged with devotion, layer upon layer, until strength and flexibility became one. The samurai gazes upon the blade, not as a mere weapon, but as a reflection of his own spirit. The katana is more than steel. It is centuries of craft, a legacy passed down, a symbol of his oath. It is called the soul of the samurai, for it embodies the very principles by which he lives. To draw it is to commit. To strike with it is to bear the weight of honor and consequence. He places the blade across his knees, a soft cloth beside him, the small maintenance kit laid out with ritual care. First, he wipes the blade gently, removing the oil applied in the morning. He inspects every inch of the edge, searching for even the faintest mark, the slightest flaw. None are found. With steady hands, he applies new oil, spreading it evenly with the cloth, ensuring the steel will not rust, will not dull, will not betray him. Each stroke is deliberate, almost meditative, as though polishing the blade also polishes the spirit. Beside the katana lies the wakizashi, the shorter companion sword. He unsheathes it as well, repeating the ritual, giving it the same respect, though smaller in size. Together, these two swords, the daish, are inseparable from the man himself. The katana, long and noble, for battle and defense. The wakizashi, shorter, always worn at his side, even indoors, a constant companion, a reminder of vigilance. In the most extreme of duties, the wakizashi may serve in the final act of seppuku, ritual suicide, when honor demands death over dishonor. Thus, it carries a gravity even greater than its blade. When both swords are polished, he sets them aside briefly, kneeling once more in reflection. He recalls the words often spoken by his elders: the sword is the soul of the samurai. To lose it is to lose oneself. He understands this deeply, for the weapon is not only tool but teacher. From it he learns patience, for mastery takes years of steady practice. From it he learns humility, for arrogance leads only to mistakes. From it he learns mortality, for each stroke reminds him of life's fragile thread. And so, the samurai's bond with his sword is not one of possession but of devotion. He does not boast of it, nor flaunt it. He cares for it as he cares for his own life, with vigilance, with respect, with constancy. When the time comes to draw it, he will do so with purpose, not recklessly, not without cause. For to draw the sword without need is to dishonor the blade, to dishonor the code, to dishonor oneself. The afternoon passes slowly as he tends to these rituals. By the time the sun begins to drift lower, the armor has been checked, the blades polished, the soul of the warrior renewed through contact with the tools of his path. He rises, placing the swords once more upon their stand, bowing lightly before them. The armor is set in place, each piece aligned, ready for the moment it may be required. In this way, the samurai closes the cycle of preparation. The body has been trained, the spirit centered, the tools of his duty honored and preserved. As the evening approaches, he turns toward the next rhythm of his day, the simple yet vital act of nourishment, the meal of the warrior. Chapter 6: Samurai and Society. In the stillness of the Japanese morning, when the mist drapes low across the rice fields and the rooftops of wooden homes glisten faintly with dew, the samurai emerges not only as a warrior, but as a figure who holds a place within the delicate fabric of society. His role is not confined to the battlefield or the training hall. It extends outward into the lives of peasants, artisans, merchants, monks, and nobles alike. To understand the samurai is to see him not as an isolated figure, but as part of a living, breathing world of obligations, expectations, and silent gazes. Imagine, if you will, the village at the foot of a daimyo's castle. The castle itself rises from the landscape like a reminder of power, thick walls, layered gates, and watchtowers standing over the countryside. Yet below, clustered near the waterways and roads, life unfolds in rhythms far more ordinary. Farmers bend over in paddies, their feet deep in mud, guiding water through narrow channels that glisten under the pale sun. Children run with laughter between narrow lanes, chasing each other past shops that sell bundles of firewood or cloth dyed in muted indigo. Smoke curls lazily from hearths where women prepare simple meals of rice gruel and greens. And somewhere within this scene, a samurai walks. His presence shifts the tone of the street, not always in a grand display, but subtly. Conversations lower. Bows are offered. Even the children, curious and wide-eyed, pause their games to watch him pass. His two swords, the katana and the wakizashi, hang at his side, marking him unmistakably as a man of the warrior class. For peasants, artisans, and merchants, these swords are not only weapons. They are symbols. They speak of status, of the invisible wall that divides the samurai from those who labor with their hands, even though in daily life their paths cross constantly. The samurai does not always stride with arrogance. Many are quiet, measured, and solemn. But the people who pass him know that his presence embodies power sanctioned by the daimyo and, beyond the daimyo, the shogunate itself. If trouble were to rise in the street, the samurai would be both judge and enforcer. His very existence represents both protection and authority, a paradox that ordinary folk must live with each day. Yet society is not simply divided by fear. There is also respect, and sometimes even affection. For within his role, the samurai is not only a sword-bearer, but also a guardian of order. In times when bandits raid villages, when taxes weigh heavily, when disputes erupt, it is often the samurai who intervenes. He may ride out with others to patrol the countryside, ensuring that the peasant's harvest reaches the storehouses safely. He may resolve quarrels at the market, his voice carrying the authority of his master. Even when he speaks few words, the presence of his family crest stitched on his clothing reminds all that he stands as an extension of his lord's will. But let us step closer and move beyond the village streets, into the manor where a daimyo governs. Here, the samurai's role becomes more layered. Within the great wooden hall, the daimyo sits upon a raised platform, attendants kneeling around him, scrolls and documents laid carefully before him. Samurai gather in quiet rows, listening, waiting, ready to serve. Some advise on military matters, fortifications, patrol routes, troop numbers. Others oversee taxation, collecting rice from the farmers in quantities that support both the castle and the warriors who protect it. Some act as messengers, carrying the daimyo's words across the provinces. Still others act as administrators, ensuring that justice, in its ordered and rigid form, flows from the Lord to the people below. In this way, the samurai are not only fighters, they are bureaucrats, officials, intermediaries between the ruling class and the villagers who toil daily. Their literacy, often rooted in training with brush and ink, elevates them above many others. A samurai may spend as much time writing records, copying poems, or reading military texts as he does practicing strikes with a wooden sword. It is this blend of physical training and intellectual labor that gives the class its unique place. Yet the line between classes remains firm. Peasants, though respected for their essential role in producing rice, the very foundation of Japan's economy, cannot wear the two swords. Merchants, though sometimes wealthy, are regarded as lower in status, for their wealth is made through exchange, not through direct labor of the soil. Artisans, who craft swords, armor, and lacquered boxes, produce objects that samurai value deeply, yet they themselves remain beneath in the hierarchy. The samurai navigates these boundaries carefully. He may speak with a merchant, purchase silk for his household, or exchange pleasantries with a farmer, but all know the invisible lines that structure their society. Still, within the quiet corners of this structured world, human moments arise. A farmer bows low to a passing samurai, and the samurai nods in return, briefly, but enough to recognize the effort of the man whose rice will one day fill his bowl. A merchant bows deeply as he presents a finely crafted teacup, knowing that this warrior may bring patronage that sustains his shop. An artisan, hammering steel into the glowing blade of a katana, knows that his work will live in the samurai's hand, wielded with deadly precision or carried with solemn pride. Society, for all its divisions, is woven together by these threads of exchange, acknowledgement, and dependence. The samurai needs the rice grown by the farmer, the armor forged by the craftsman, the scrolls written by the scholar. And in turn, the people need the protection and order that the samurai enforces. At the edges of this society, temples rise in stone and wood, their gates painted vermilion, their bells echoing across valleys. Here, the samurai bows before monks, listening to words that remind him of impermanence, of the need for discipline and compassion. Though he holds power, the teachings of Buddhism and Shinto weave through his life, reminding him that status is fleeting, that death is ever near. Monks may scold arrogance, encourage humility, and guide the warrior toward balance. Thus, even within temples, the samurai does not stand above, but kneels, humbled by truths older than swords and castles. The role of women also intertwines with this society. The wife of a samurai upholds the honor of the household, manages affairs in her husband's absence, and ensures that loyalty to the Lord remains firm. Within her lies the quiet dignity of the samurai class, unseen yet deeply influential. Even she, when walking among villagers, carries the aura of status, her bearing calm and composed, her clothing carefully arranged. And above all, there is loyalty to the daimyo, to the clan, to the shogun, and to the emperor, however distant his influence may feel. This loyalty binds the samurai in a web that stretches outward. He cannot act as he pleases, for his actions ripple through the layers of society. His bow, his silence, his stern gaze, they are all reflections of a larger order. As the sun sets and the lanterns are lit along narrow streets, the samurai's presence remains constant. In the tea house, where merchants laugh and drink sake, they lower their voices when a samurai enters. In the market stalls, as villagers barter over bundles of vegetables or dried fish, they glance nervously at the warrior who inspects the goods with measured eyes. And yet, in the same moment, a child may peer curiously, whispering to a friend about the shining sword at his side. The samurai belongs everywhere and nowhere, part of the village, yet separate, both protector and enforcer, both admired and feared. His life is lived within these boundaries, balanced on the blade of duty. And as night deepens, as crickets sing in the fields, and as smoke rises gently from hearths across the land, the society of Japan rests within this careful structure, a structure upheld, in no small part, by the silent figure of the samurai. Chapter 7. A samurai's code. The day of a samurai was not measured only by the rise of the sun, the swing of the sword, or the sound of marching feet. Beneath every gesture, every decision, and every breath, there was something greater that guided him. This was Bushid, the way of the warrior, the invisible thread binding together his spirit, his duty, and his destiny. From the moment a boy was first trained to hold a wooden sword, the elders whispered this word to him. It was not written down in one single book, nor chanted like a prayer, but lived in the smallest details of life. To follow Bushid was to embody honor even in silence, to act rightly even when no one was watching, and to remain calm when storms of war or storms of the heart raged around him. The samurai awoke before dawn, not only to sharpen his sword or practice his stance, but to steady his soul. He knew that a warrior's greatest strength was not found in muscle alone, but in discipline. Bushid demanded that the mind be sharper than the blade, the heart steadier than the bowstring. This philosophy taught him that courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to act despite it. Loyalty was the core of the code. A samurai lived not for himself, but for his master, his clan, and the generations that came before him. He bowed deeply before his lord, not out of empty habit, but with the understanding that his life belonged to something larger. His service was not measured by rewards or gold, but by an unshakable bond of duty. The code made betrayal the deepest stain, one that could never be washed away, while loyalty brought honor that lasted even beyond death. Honor itself was the crown jewel of Bushid. It was said that a samurai could lose his wealth, his land, or even his life, but if he held onto his honor, he had lost nothing. To disgrace himself, however, was to lose everything, even if he lived 100 more years. Every word spoken at court, every bow given to a villager, every stroke of his sword on the battlefield, all of it was a reflection of his honor. Compassion also lived within the code. Though trained for war, the samurai was not meant to be cruel. Mercy to the weak, kindness to the helpless, and fairness in judgment were expected. To strike down an enemy without cause was dishonorable, but to spare a life when it served justice was noble. Bushid urged warriors to see beyond blood and blade, to remember that true strength was found in balance, in knowing when to fight and when to show restraint. Discipline shaped every part of daily living. Meals were eaten in silence, not to dull the senses but to sharpen them. Posture was kept straight, not for vanity, but as a reflection of inner order. A samurai learned that the way he tied his robe, the way he stepped into a room, even the way he drank tea, was as much a test of character as the duels he fought. To let the body fall into laziness was to allow the spirit to decay. Respect was not demanded but lived. A samurai showed it to his elders, to his peers, to his enemies, and even to nature itself. The falling cherry blossom was not just a flower but a lesson, that beauty and life are fleeting, and so must be honored while they last. Even in battle, respect was shown. An opponent was not merely an obstacle but a teacher, a mirror through which a warrior could see his own skill and weakness. Death itself was woven into the code, not feared but accepted. To the samurai, death was not the end but a test of whether his life had truly followed Bushid. If dishonor stained him, death could be a final act of cleansing, a last chance to prove his loyalty and courage. Yet if he had lived rightly, then death came as a quiet companion, nothing to fear, only a doorway to be stepped through with dignity. Bushid was not a chain that restricted him, but a compass that guided him. With it, he knew where to stand, when to act, and how to carry himself. It gave meaning to both triumph and loss. To outsiders, the code might have seemed harsh, demanding endless sacrifice. But to the samurai, it was freedom. Freedom from doubt, freedom from shame, and freedom from living a life without purpose. In the evenings, when the training fields grew silent and the fires burned low, the samurai would sometimes sit beneath the moon, reflecting on the day. His hands might still ache from the sword, his body weary from endless drills, but his mind was at peace. For he had lived another day by the code, another day of loyalty, discipline, honor, and respect. And in that silence, with the night wind rustling the trees and the distant sound of temple bells echoing through the dark, he would remind himself of a simple truth. The sword was his weapon, but Bushid was his soul. Chapter 8. The Samurai and the Village. The samurai's world was not made only of castles, courts, and battlefields. Beneath the shadow of the Lord's banners, life in the villages stretched quietly, season by season, year after year. For the common people, the samurai was both protector and overseer, both distant figure of authority and very present part of daily life. To understand the full path of the warrior, one must also see him through the eyes of the farmers, craftsmen, and merchants whose lives intertwined with his own. In the early light of dawn, when mist still clung to the rice fields and the water in the paddies reflected the pale sky, villagers bent their backs to the earth. The rhythm of their lives followed the cycle of planting, growing, and harvesting. Yet always, behind their toil, was the figure of the samurai, the armored guardian who ensured that their labor was not stolen by bandits, rival clans, or lawless ronin wandering the countryside. A samurai's presence in the village brought both comfort and unease. On one hand, he was the shield that protected them. On the other, he was a reminder of authority, of taxes owed, rules enforced, and punishments carried out. His steps through the narrow dirt paths of the village caused children to whisper and scatter, while elders bowed low with practiced humility. His very posture, straight and precise, carried the weight of Bushid into the humble homes of thatched roofs and smoke-filled hearths. When disputes arose among the villagers, the samurai became judge. A quarrel over land boundaries, an argument over stolen firewood, or even a fight between neighbors, these were not merely petty matters. To resolve them fairly was to preserve harmony, and harmony was seen as a reflection of order itself. The samurai listened not with impatience but with calm deliberation, for Bushid demanded fairness and wisdom even in the smallest matters. To favor one man unjustly, or to punish without reason, was dishonorable. Sometimes, however, justice was harsh. A thief caught stealing grain during a famine might face not only rebuke but punishment severe enough to deter others. To the villagers, this seemed cruel, but to the samurai, it was necessity, for if order collapsed, the whole village would suffer. Mercy and severity walked hand in hand, and the balance between them was a weight the warrior carried silently. Beyond authority, the samurai also served as teacher. Young boys watched him with wide eyes, imitating his posture with wooden sticks, dreaming of armor and banners. Girls, too, admired the discipline he carried, the calm dignity that marked his every movement. On certain days, he might gather the village youth in the fields, showing them the basics of respect, stance, and the way of the bow. Not all would become warriors, but all could learn discipline, honor, and loyalty. The samurai's interactions with the farmers revealed another truth of Bushid. The land and the sword were not enemies, but partners. Without rice, no army could march. Without farmers, no castle could stand. A wise samurai respected the soil as much as the steel he carried. During planting and harvest, he would sometimes walk the edges of the fields, speaking with the elders, listening to their worries about floods, pests, or poor yields. Though his hands did not push the plough, he understood that every grain of rice was as valuable as a sharpened arrow. Festivals brought moments of lightness into this bond between warrior and villager. When lanterns were strung across the streets, when drums beat into the night, and when rice wine flowed freely, even the stern samurai allowed himself a rare smile. He would not dance with reckless abandon, nor shout like the common folk, but his presence, calm, watchful, yet softened, was itself a blessing. In these moments, villagers felt the humanity beneath the armor, the man behind the sword. And yet, always, there lingered the awareness of separation. The samurai did not fully belong to the village. His duty was higher, his loyalty tied to the Lord, not to the soil or the harvest. He could sit among the villagers, share their food, even protect their children, but he remained apart, bound by a different destiny. The villagers understood this. They admired him, they feared him, and sometimes they pitied him, for they knew he would never live a simple life of family and fields. But when danger came, when rumors of bandits spread, or when rival clans sent raiders into the countryside, the villagers' eyes turned to the samurai with complete faith. He stood at the entrance of the village, armor gleaming, blade steady, and the people felt a calmness settle over them. In that moment, they knew that their sweat, their toil, their fragile harvest was guarded by something unbreakable. For the samurai, this was not merely duty but purpose. Protecting the weak, ensuring justice, and living as both sword and shield, this was the heart of his existence. The battlefield may have brought glory, but the village brought meaning. Here, in the quiet parts between rice fields, in the small disputes over land and harvest, in the festivals and the fairs, Bushid was tested not by great battles but by the patience, fairness, and humility of everyday life. As night fell and lanterns dimmed, the villagers slept with the knowledge that the warrior watched over them. And the samurai, sitting in silence beneath the stars, reminded himself of the same truth. His sword was not only for war, but for peace. To guard the village was to guard the soul of the land itself. Chapter 9. The Way of the Sword. The samurai's life was inseparable from his sword. Not merely a weapon, it was an extension of his body, an expression of his spirit, a companion from the earliest moments of training until the final day of his life. From the moment a boy first touched a wooden practice sword, he was learning not just the movements of battle, but the essence of discipline, patience, and harmony that would come to define him. The sword was not an object to wield carelessly. It demanded respect, constant attention, and an understanding that went far beyond skill or strength. In the quiet hours of the morning, when the dew still clung to the grass and the village slept beneath the rising sun, the young samurai would begin his practice. He gripped the bokken, the wooden sword, with hands still calloused from previous sessions. The movements were slow, deliberate, each swing calculated, each step measured. Footwork was as important as the strike, for balance and posture allowed a warrior to move with precision while conserving energy. Even a single misstep could become a fatal mistake when the steel blade was introduced. With every strike, the boy learned lessons of patience. The sword moved through the air with a whisper of motion, yet each motion required concentration, awareness, and intention. He was taught to breathe with the swing, to allow the body and mind to act as one. The teacher, often an older samurai with years of battle behind him, would correct posture, point out errors in grip, and remind him repeatedly that mastery could not be rushed. Mastery was earned through repetition, observation, and humility. The forging of the katana itself was a ritual of almost sacred importance. In distant villages and towns, blacksmiths labored over red-hot furnaces, folding steel repeatedly, creating layers that would give the blade both resilience and sharpness. The hamon, the distinctive temper line along the edge, was not simply decorative. It was a mark of perfection, the result of countless hours of heating, hammering, and quenching. To wield such a blade was to carry the soul of the craftsman, and in turn, the samurai was reminded of the responsibility this carried. A poorly cared for sword reflected a poorly lived life. As the boy matured, the wooden bokken was replaced with a shinken, a live steel blade. The weight was different, heavier, yet balanced with a precision that felt almost alive in his hands. The first time he drew the blade from its scabbard, he felt a connection deeper than words could describe. The hiss of the steel sliding through the sayo, the smell of polished metal, the cold, smooth edge resting against his palm, these sensations were etched into memory. From that moment on, the sword was more than a tool. It was a teacher, a mirror, and a constant reminder of duty. Training with the sword involved more than swings and stances. The samurai practiced kata, formal sequences of movement, over and over until they became instinct. Each kata told a story, a lesson, a principle of combat or strategy. Some simulated multiple opponents, teaching awareness and adaptability. Others focused on precision and economy of movement, highlighting the elegance of efficiency. In these repeated sequences, the warrior found rhythm, patience, and discipline. He learned to anticipate, to respect the power of the blade, and to act without hesitation when called upon. The ritual care of the sword was equally important. After practice or combat, the blade was cleaned meticulously. Oil was applied to prevent rust, the edge inspected for even the faintest mark, and the scabbard polished until it gleamed. These actions were not mere chores but meditations, moments of quiet reflection. Handling the sword in silence, the samurai considered his actions, his thoughts, and the honor of the blade. To neglect these duties was to dishonor oneself, for the sword and the warrior were inseparable. Beyond training and care, the sword dictated behavior in daily life. Even walking through the village, the samurai's posture, his attention, and his movements reflected his readiness. The blade hung at his side as a reminder of responsibility, not only to his lord but to all who relied upon him. Its presence was a silent warning to wrongdoers and a reassurance to those in need. Every action, from bowing to conversing, was tempered by the awareness that the sword could be drawn at a moment's notice. In moments of reflection, the samurai would meditate on the philosophy of the blade. The sword was a teacher of impermanence, of focus, of life and death. Its edge reminded him that one misstep could end life instantly, while its form demanded patience and respect. Through the sword, he learned courage, not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. He learned humility, for no matter his skill, there was always more to learn, another strike to refine, another stance to perfect. And he learned clarity, for in the silent focus required to draw, strike, or parry, all distractions fell away, leaving only the present moment. The bond between samurai and sword extended into ceremony as well. During formal events, the blade was displayed with care. Its presence honored ancestors, commemorated victories, and symbolized the warrior's commitment to Bushido. Even in death, the katana remained by the samurai's side, a final companion and testament to a life of discipline. Combat, when it came, was the ultimate expression of this bond. The swing of the blade, the precision of the strike, the timing of each movement, all were informed by countless hours of training and reflection. The katana moved as an extension of the samurai's body, its edge sharp yet guided by judgment and restraint. To kill was not taken lightly, to fight honorably was paramount. Every encounter was governed by respect, awareness, and a silent understanding that the sword demanded responsibility. And yet, the way of the sword was not solely about battle. It was about living a life guided by purpose. Every morning practice, every careful cleaning, every respectful bow and measured step through the village reinforced a code of conduct that shaped the samurai's soul. Strength was not merely physical, but moral. Mastery was not only skill, but discipline, reflection, and adherence to principles higher than oneself. Through seasons, the samurai honed his art. In spring, the cherry blossoms fell softly, reminding him of life's impermanence. In summer, the heat pressed upon his body during long hours of training, testing endurance. Autumn's wind carried the scent of harvested rice, teaching patience and gratitude. Winter's cold hardened resolve, each breath visible in the crisp air, each swing a test of perseverance. And through every season, the sword remained constant, companion, teacher, and mirror of the warrior's inner self. By night, When lanterns flickered and the village settled into silence, the samurai would kneel before his sword. He would bow his head, hands resting gently on the hilt, reflecting on the day's actions, mistakes, and lessons. In these quiet hours, he understood the truth that the sword was not merely a weapon, but a guide. Through it, he learned respect, courage, patience, discipline, and clarity, virtues that carried him beyond the battlefield into every corner of life. The sword shaped thought, behavior, and identity. It influenced how he treated others, how he carried himself, and how he measured honor. Its presence demanded mindfulness. It was a constant teacher of impermanence, a reminder that life is fragile, fleeting, and precious. To wield it well was to wield life itself with care. Thus, the samurai's existence intertwined inseparably with the blade. From the first wooden sword in youth to the polished katana of adulthood, the way of the sword governed the rhythm of days, the shape of thought, and the depth of soul. It was not merely an instrument of combat, but a path, a slow, deliberate, disciplined, and eternal path, guiding the warrior toward mastery not only of steel, but of himself. Chapter 10: War and Duty. This one's gonna be long, slow, and uninterrupted. Full deep dive into how samurai lived through battles, campaigns, political intrigue, and their responsibilities to their lord and clan. We'll drift through strategy, camps, the tension before combat, the rituals before and after battle, interactions with allies and enemies, and the way duty shaped every choice. Everything in that Sleep Story 9K plus word style, immersive, calm, and detailed. I'll begin the full Chapter 10 narration right here. Chapter 10: War and Duty. The samurai's life was never entirely his own. Even in times of peace, his thoughts were tied to the campaigns he might one day face, the battles that could erupt with a single command from his lord. War was an ever-present shadow, stretching across the countryside, creeping through forests, and lingering in the minds of warriors as they went about daily routines. The samurai understood that his purpose was bound to duty, and duty often led him to conflict. From the first light of morning, banners stirred gently in the breeze over the castle walls, signaling the readiness of men-at-arms. Soldiers, footmen, and cavalry alike moved in practiced rhythm, but the samurai observed them with a keen eye. Organization, discipline, and coordination were paramount. A battle was not merely a clash of weapons, but a test of strategy, patience, and judgment. Each man under his command was a thread in a larger tapestry, and the samurai's responsibility was to weave them together into an unbroken line of strength. Training for war began long before the clash of steel. Hours were spent drilling formations, perfecting archery from horseback, and learning to move silently through forests and hills. The samurai understood that skill with the katana alone was not enough. The awareness of terrain, the timing of reinforcements, and the subtleties of supply lines could decide life or death. Each maneuver, each march, each practice skirmish was a lesson, preparing the mind and body for the unpredictability of actual combat. When campaigns were ordered, preparation became ritual. Armors were inspected meticulously, each plate polished, each cord tightened. Swords were sharpened and oiled, bowstrings tested, arrows counted. Horses were groomed, saddled, and led through practice runs to ensure they would respond without hesitation in the chaos of battle. Every detail mattered. The samurai knew that even the smallest oversight could bring catastrophe, for a single moment of distraction could turn advantage into disaster. On the march to the battlefield, the samurai moved quietly, alert, eyes scanning for signs of ambush or danger. Villages passed silently, the people wary of armed men moving through their lands. The samurai bowed to locals where appropriate, mindful that courtesy and respect were as vital as steel. Even in the midst of war, the principles of Bushido guided behavior. Excessive cruelty, unnecessary destruction, and dishonor were avoided. The samurai's strength was tempered by morality. Camps were organized with precision. Fires were lit for warmth and cooking, but soldiers slept in ordered rows, weapons always within reach. Messengers carried information between tents, commanders discussed strategies under the quiet stars, and the samurai moved among his men, observing, instructing, and preparing for the morrow. The tension in these hours was palpable, the anticipation of violence hanging like a low fog, yet discipline and calm were maintained. The battlefield itself was a place of paradox, terror and courage, chaos and order, death and honor, all coexisting in the same space. The samurai faced his opponent not only with physical skill, but with mental acuity. He watched for openings, calculated risk, and moved with a balance of aggression and caution. The clash of swords rang across the fields, arrows whistled through the air, and the cries of men echoed as the samurai held himself steady, mindful of every motion. Victory was never assumed. It was earned through patience, observation, and adaptability. Even in moments of triumph, the samurai acted with restraint. Looting and recklessness were discouraged. The maintenance of honor and the welfare of his men were paramount. And when the battle concluded, the work continued, tending to the wounded, arranging the fallen respectfully, and ensuring that discipline remained intact. Even in death, the principles of Bushido demanded dignity. Political duties intertwined with martial responsibilities. A samurai could be called to negotiate, serve as envoy, or enforce the will of his lord. Diplomacy required a different skill set than the battlefield, yet the same virtues applied: patience, clarity, courage, and honor. Decisions carried consequences not only for himself, but for his clan and the people who depended on his guidance. Every action was scrutinized, measured, and weighed against the expectations of loyalty and duty. At night, after the dust of conflict had settled, the samurai would often sit alone, reflecting on the day. He considered victories, defeats, the lives lost, and the lives spared. Meditation and quiet contemplation were as much a part of war as any sword stroke or tactical maneuver. Through these moments, he sought understanding of strategy, of humanity, and of the unbroken thread connecting his actions to the greater tapestry of life. In these quiet hours, the samurai also remembered the teachings of his elders, that courage without wisdom was recklessness, that loyalty without honor was servitude, that strength without restraint was danger. The battlefield tested all these lessons, yet even beyond the clamor of war, they guided daily life. Duty was not left on the field. It traveled with him into the village, the castle, and the home, shaping each word, each gesture, and each thought. The life of the samurai in war was a continuous interplay of preparation, action, and reflection. Every march, every camp, every strike, and every negotiation was informed by a deep understanding of his responsibilities, to his lord, to his men, and to himself. Death was always near, yet the awareness of it sharpened every sense, honed every skill, and deepened the clarity of thought. Fear was acknowledged, but never allowed to dictate action. Courage was measured, deliberate, and inseparable from honor. Through years of campaigns, the samurai learned that true mastery was not merely survival, but the consistent application of Bushido under every circumstance. Life and death, victory and defeat, joy and sorrow, all were tests of character. To navigate these extremes with calm, discipline, and unwavering purpose was the ultimate expression of the warrior's way. Even when peace returned, the echoes of war remained. The samurai carried memory and experience as quietly as he carried his sword. He trained, taught, and guided, ever mindful that the next campaign could arrive without warning. And in all of it, duty, silent, unyielding, and absolute, shaped the rhythm of his days and the essence of his life. Through battlefields, campfires, councils, and quiet reflection, the samurai lived a life intertwined with war and service, His body, mind, and soul were forged not only by the sword, but by the constant practice of responsibility, honor, and vigilance. The world watched him, relied on him, and respected him. And the samurai, aware of the weight of all these threads, continued forward, steady, disciplined, and ever committed to the path laid out before him. Chapter 11: Legacy and the Twilight of the Samurai. The sun rose slowly over the quiet village, casting long, golden rays across the fields and roofs. The samurai, now older, walked with a measured pace, his hair streaked with silver, and the weight of years evident in his shoulders. Yet despite the changes time had brought, the essence of the warrior remained, calm, deliberate, and unbroken. The sword at his side, polished and meticulously cared for, reflected not only the rising sun but the long journey of a life spent in service, discipline, and honor. In his youth, the samurai had lived for action, the rush of battle, the thrill of skill mastered, the clarity of focus demanded by life and death encounters. But in age, he discovered that the true depth of his path lay in reflection. Each strike, each decision, each act of loyalty or courage was not merely a moment to be remembered, but a thread woven into the fabric of his life, connecting past, present, and future. The village, which had once watched him with awe and caution, now greeted him with gentle familiarity. Children ran to peek at the familiar figure, elders bowed with respect, and merchants paused in their work, acknowledging the enduring presence of a man who had long been a guardian of peace and order. Even as society slowly shifted around him, the samurai's role, though quieter now, remained vital. He embodied a bridge between the past and the present, a living testament to the principles of Bushido. His mornings were spent in quiet rituals. He tended his sword with care, polished the armor he rarely wore, and practiced movements that had become second nature through decades of repetition. Yet these were not mere exercises. Each motion was meditation, each breath a reminder of discipline, each glance a reflection on honor. In the simplicity of daily tasks, he discovered profound truths, that patience was as powerful as courage, that restraint was as sharp as the blade, and that wisdom often spoke in silence rather than in words. Younger samurai, still full of energy and ambition, came to him for guidance. They sought instruction in swordplay, strategy, and conduct, but more importantly, they sought understanding of the mind and spirit required to walk the path fully. The elder samurai taught not with harshness or authority alone, but with example. In his calm presence, they observed humility, patience, and measured action. They learned that skill with the sword was meaningless without the guidance of character, that victory without honor was hollow, and that true courage was often expressed in quiet restraint. Even as the shogunate's influence shifted and new technologies and philosophies began to reshape the land, the samurai's life remained a testament to enduring principles. He adapted, but he did not compromise. He understood that the world would change, that new lords and new systems would rise, yet the essence of what it meant to live with honor, loyalty, and discipline could never be taken away. The sword, polished and sharp, remained at his side, not merely a weapon, but a symbol of continuity, a reminder that the heart of the warrior transcended the battlefield. Occasionally, he walked to the edges of the village, observing the fields, the forests, and the flowing rivers. Here, away from the chatter of daily life, he reflected on the lives he had touched, the villagers he had protected, the comrades he had fought alongside, the enemies he had faced with both courage and respect. Each memory was vivid, the sound of arrows slicing the air, the weight of armor under the summer sun, the quiet moments of peace beside the fire in a distant camp. These recollections were neither regrets nor triumphs alone. They were threads of understanding, weaving a life that had been lived fully, deliberately, and with unwavering purpose. As twilight descended, the elder samurai often sat beneath a tree, the wind stirring the leaves above, and he considered the future. He knew that younger generations would carry the way forward, that the world would continue beyond his lifetime. His task was not only to teach technique but to instill values, the enduring wisdom of discipline, honor, courage, loyalty, and respect. These were the legacies that outlasted castles, battles, and fleeting victories. Through his guidance, the principles of Bushido would persist, echoing quietly in the actions of those who followed. Even in solitude, he was not alone. The sword beside him, the memories in his mind, and the silent lessons carried by the wind all spoke of connection, to ancestors, to comrades, to the world he had protected. Death, which had once seemed distant, was now a gentle companion. He faced it with acceptance, understanding that a life lived with honor, with purpose, and in adherence to the code, left a mark far deeper than the years themselves. In the final moments of his day, he would close his eyes, hands resting lightly on the sword, and meditate on a simple truth, that a life of service, discipline, and respect is never forgotten. The villages he protected, the young samurai he taught, the quiet moments of reflection by rivers and forests, all were part of an enduring story. One life, measured not in power or wealth, but in the depth of principle and action, had left a legacy that would ripple quietly through generations. And as night settled fully, stars twinkling in the clear sky, the elder samurai breathed deeply, feeling the pulse of the world around him. The path he had walked, through battle, honor, duty, and reflection, had led him here, to a place of calm understanding. He was part of something larger than himself, a lineage of warriors, a living embodiment of Bushido, and a guide for those yet to walk the path. Through all seasons, through all trials, and through all changes in the world, the essence of the samurai endured. The sword, the discipline, the courage, and the honor, these were eternal. And in the quiet twilight of his life, the elder samurai rested peacefully, knowing that his journey had been true, his purpose fulfilled, and his legacy secure. The story of one warrior's life ended, yet the lessons lived on, whispered in the rustle of leaves, carried by the wind through the villages, and remembered in the actions of those who would follow. A life of loyalty, courage, honor, and discipline does not vanish. It persists quietly, steadily, and eternally, like the soft glow of lanterns in a village at dusk, or the distant toll of temple bells echoing through the mountains. The samurai's journey, from boyhood to elder, from first wooden sword to the polished katana of wisdom, had come full circle. And as the night deepened, the world slept, comforted by the steady presence of a life well lived, a path